we'll be looking at the new controls at the Annex A, and the end of the webinar, I will be taking your questions and I'll try to answer them. So, about us, SafeCert. What does SafeCert do? SafeCert provides auditing, certification, and training services in a worldwide range, and such as GDPR, information security, business continuity, quality management, and personal information management systems. And we are doing this with the accreditation of UCAS at the UK and EAS in the USA. Also, we are a member of CPT Certification Service, which is the organization at the UK that supervises the trainings. So all the trainings that we provide are accredited with the CPT Certification Service, and also all of our services are, of course, again supervised by UCAS, IS, and CPT Certification Service. So if you want to have another and more deeply trainings with the certifications such as the information security management, quality management, or business continuity management, you can check out our social media accounts or contact us. So our agenda today is a relationship between the ISO 27001 and 27002, with the new version of 27002, and also the result of the revision on 27001, how it will be changed, what should we expect, and also we will be talking about the changes with the coming of the 27002 standard, because they change all the standards, annex matters, the controls. They merge some of the controls, they added some new ones, they changed the direction that the information security management system is going. And also we will be talking about the new controls of the 27002 standard, which are now collected in another kind of category that we were talking about. Okay, so when we analyze the updated terms of the ISO 27002 standard, which is used as a guide for the security controls of the 27001, that in a short term, 27001 provide us with the requirements, mandatory requirements, and some annex controls. At the 27002, we have the information of how can we implement the Annex A controls in our organization, what are the best practices. So when the 27002 standard changes, of course, we expect the 27001 standard also going to be changed. So we will be talking about the changes and the impacts of the changes, new version of the 27002 standard. So when it comes to relationship between 27002 and 27001, so 27001, it determines the management system's requirements, mandatory requirements for information security management. So when we go to the auditing part of the implementing process, we are audited for the 27001 standard, and we acquired the certification for the 27001 standard. So the main framework for our management system is always going to be 27001, because the 27001 provide us with the mandatory requirements, other requirements, Annex A controls, and that's why we have the auditing from 27001. When it comes to 27002, it determines the necessary security controls and good practices, best practices, examples for the information security management system. So in order for us to deeply understand the 27001 standard, we always need the 27002 standard. Also, the 27002 is the main standard that other ISO family members implement themselves to. Like, for example, 27017, 18, 701, 799. That those standards always going to be referred to the 27002 control matters. So when the 27002 changes, not just the 27001, also all the 27000 family will affected by it, and we now know the new control headlines for the upcoming revision of the other standards. So while the ISO 27001 specifies the mandatory requirements of the management system, ISO 27002 is an advisory guide standard that provides us with the best practices, examples, and deeply understanding the explanations of the control matters in the 27001 standard. So there is not an absolute rule, there is not a written rule about it, but we now know that every 5 years, all ISO standards are going to under review stage, which is when the ISO determines reviews and gives a conclusion about whether update it or stay the same, or to keep it same, the standard itself. Such as like this year, we now know that the ISO 9001 standard is not going to be changed anytime soon, because the ISO reviewed the standard itself and determined that the standard doesn't need any changes. But the 27001 is updated in 2013, and now the new changes of the technology world, we need more complex, we need more technology based and updated version of the standard. So now the ISO decided that this 27000 family needs some updates. So what we know is every 5 years, all the ISO standards are going under review, and it is determined whether the withdraw, update, or keep it as it is, the standards themselves. So this year, we now know that the 27002 is changed, and there's a rumor that 27001 is going to be changed in the fourth quarter of the year. So we now know that the other standards, other accompanying standards, such as, like I said, 27017, 18, 701 is going to be changed in the upcoming years or months. So 27002 had a revision. What is the impact of this revision to 27001? With the updating of the 27002 standard causes it to be updated in the accompanying other standards, like I said, 17, 18, 701, and of course 27001. So 27001 is going to also be expected a revision in the later of this year, and now that we have a template for the new upcoming 27001 standard, which we'll be talking about in the later part of this webinar. So what has been changed in this standard? First of all, the 27002 is named Information Technology, Security Techniques, and Code of Practice for Information Security Controls. It's been like this since 2013. But in this year, with the new changes, its name is also changed for something more complex, like information security, cyber security, and privacy protection, information security controls. This tells us that with the new coming regulations, new coming technologies, that the technology world is needed something much more complex than just security techniques. Now it has cyber security part, which is more concerned about, and we have privacy protection for GDPR compliance and other regulations concerned about the privacy of the personal identifiable information, that the information we have and must be protected, because all the upcoming technology events uses or takes advantage of the personal information of the people. Right now in the world, the personal information is much more important and valued than the money itself. So the standards, the management systems also turns their directions to the personal protection of the personal information. This also is caused because of the GDPR standards, GDPR regulations, what can we say? GDPR regulations effect of the world, because if you ever process any information that belongs to the UA EU citizen, you must be compliant to the GDPR. So that also have the effect of the management systems itself. So at the older standard, we have 113 controls under 14 headlines. But in the new revision, we have 93 controls under 4 headlines. That 4 headlines include organizational, human, technological, and physical categories. So when I first read the standard, the template of the standard, it came like it's going to be hard transition from 14 headlines to 114 controls to 4 headlines. And at first glance, it was hard to get the mentality under the 4 headlines. But once you imagine the consultancy services of the new standard and the organizational compliance of the 4 headlines, now it makes sense. Now it makes much more sense, because all the controls, all the annex matters, all the standard matters always provides some security controls under the 4 headlines, to be honest. So 14 headlines to 4 headlines means we can now focus on more important things, like the organizational impact of the organizational changes, or the organizational importance of the management system, because now that we know which headlines, which NXA controls, which requirements provides which of the headline, which of the part of the company that we need to focus on. So we now know, in order for the perfect security, we need to focus our attention, we need to pay our attention to organizational side of the company or management system. The human side is much more important, because most of the security events are always caused by the humans. The technological side, because it always evolves itself to the much more complex part, or the much more complex or important, or the changes that comes with the new upcoming technologies. And the physical side, of course, does have some impact on the security, but not that much important for us anyways. And we can tell that which headline is more important by controls under their headlines that we will be talking about in a matter of time. So we have some new controls, such as 5.7 threat intelligence, that is focusing on the events or the incidents that we have, and how we react to the incidents. What should we do to not have that incident again? How can we collect the evidences of the incident to understand what happened exactly? 5.23 information security for the use of cloud services. So the ISO released 2 new standards in the past 5 years. 27,017 for the cloud protection of the cloud environments, 27,018 protection of the personal information on cloud systems. So I was expecting some control matters in the new standard, and as we can see right now, the cloud services does have some space in our new standard. 530 information and communication technologies, preparation for business continuity. Now, in the old days, all of the communications were provided by cables and more physical stuff, but right now all the communications are turning stuff to a more wireless and online situation. So of course the information and communication technologies are a part of our security concerns in these days. So that also have some space in our new standard. 7.4 physical security monitoring. The monitoring part of the physical security side always took itself under the 11.1, 11.2, but there wasn't any specific control for the monitoring part of the physical security. So now we have a physical security monitoring control that I believe will cover the CCTV cameras and stuff and the entrance monitorings, stuff like that. 8.9 configuration management. So there was some controls that are concerned with the configuration of the networks and systems, but not exactly specific for the configuration management. So when we audit the organization, the configuration part of the networks and systems were always in a gray spot, but right now we have configuration management control so that we can audit more deeply and more accurately. 8.10 deleting information, 8.11 data masking, 8.12 data leakage prevention. That comes with the GDPR, as we all expect. So the ISO published 27701 for GDPR and regulations that are concerned with the protection of the personal information. So we have 3 control matters now in the standard that are concerned with the personal information and general informations, deletion, masking, or preventing the leakage. 8.16 monitoring activities. We have log management for it, but as we all know, the log management isn't the only way to monitor our systems and communications between them. So now that we have monitoring activities, we have a little bit larger scale of understanding and implementing the monitoring processes. 8.23 web filtering, which was covered under 12th headline, but again, not specific. So it was in a gray spot. But right now, the web, the online side of the world is always changing and it's always evolving. So web filtering is always a needed part of the security system when it comes to the pure security concerns. 8.28 secure coding. So we have secure coding guideline or the environments where the coding is realized, but now we have a a dedicated control for secure coding. So we can't just publish a procedure and just get away with it. Now we have to really secure our coding part of the organization, because when something goes wrong with the code or the coding part of the an application or product, it is kind of hard to fix later on. So it's always good to plan how to realize how to manage the coding process and add some security part of it. So we have a dedicated control for secure coding. With the new added controls, we now have a renamed controls. That the controls that we had, but changed their names, such as control 12.7.1 information system audit controls changed to 8.34 information systems protection, or 15.1.3 information and communication technology supply chain changed to 5.21 management of information security in the information communication technology supply chain. So the 12.7.1 information system audit controls are very easy to understand, but the 15.1.3 the technology supply chain was hard to understand for the organizations. So with the new name and new explanations, I believe the management of information security in the information and communication technology supply chain is going to be much more easy to understand and process. we have a question why 27002 is revised and published before 27001. Because all the standards 27001 included are refer to 27002 control matters, because 27002 doesn't give us the mandatory requirements, but gives the explanations of the control matters. So the 27017, 18, 701, 799, and other 27000 families NXA controls are always referred to 27002. So and also publishing the 27001 in the first quarter of the year is going to raise much more questions, because much more, so many organizations are going right now at autumn stage. So they're going to be asking, are we supposed to be compliant to new version? Why are we going through the auditing process for the old version if it's going to be changed anyway? So publishing 27002, letting the organizations and consultancy firms and the certification firms know the new NXA controls and the general template of the standard is going to be a much more smooth transition to the new version. So that's why 27002, I believe, is revised and published before the 27001. Okay, we had 114 controls in the old version. Now we have 93. That will raise some questions or concerns. That are there any cancelled controls? But no, there aren't any cancelled controls in the new version. But of course, some controls were combined into one. To give the exact number, 54 controls were combined to 24 controls. That's why, even though they add some new controls, the new standard has much less control number than the old one. And to be honest, the combination or merging some controls were always necessary, such as 511 and 512 information security related policies. And information security related policies are revision the information security policies combined to 5.1 information security related policies, because when we audit the organization, we were asking what do we have concerning about information security related policies, and then we passed the 512, and how do you revise them? If you do the auditing and questioning part right, you already have the answer for two of them. So why do we need two separate controls for one purpose? So the ISO reviewed the controls, and matter of fact, they were in the same mind with us. So they merged 54 controls to 24 controls. Another example for combined controls is 1112 physical entrance controls and 1116 delivery and loading areas to 72 combined at physical entrance. So this is kind of like the thing that when I put my mind, when I consider the organizations that are compliant to ISO 27001, there are some organizations that have 2 employees, and some organizations that are 2,000 employees, and some organizations doesn't need any delivery or loading area, but some are always in a logistics with the transmission of the products, so they have delivery and loading areas. So they combined them to physical entrance with 2, I believe, different controls, but still, when you read the control itself, it gives much more makes much more sense, because they have reviewed the explanations also. So when we think about the physical entrance, we of course think about the physical entrance itself, and physical entrance of the delivery trucks or any logistic concerns. So they merge that too. They didn't just add new controls; they also separated some. When I say some, I mean just one. 1823 technical compliance review is separated to 536 compliance with policies, rules, and standards for information security, and 88 management of technical vulnerabilities. Now they separated that because when you think about technical compliance, you just don't think about the penetration test or any testing that is concerned with the technical side of the things. So because of the new headlines, is 5 organizational and 8, I believe, technical. Of course, there is 2 sides of the technical compliance, so they separated it to 5 organizational side, compliance with policies, rules, and standards, and 8 technical side, management of technical vulnerabilities. So in the technical vulnerabilities, we search for technical compliance or technical security or how they manage the technical vulnerabilities that the organization have. And when we go to the 536, we comply with policies, rules, and standards, they always state some of the compliance concerns, compliance processes for the technical side of the organization. So is the organization goes according with the policies, procedures, requirements, rules that they have, and do they or are they doing it with the according to the documents, and is the technical side of the applying the documents to the real life, are they doing it with efficiently? So we have now 2 different perspectives for one control. So they separated to two different controls in 2 different headlines. But and we have 35 controls remained the same by changing the control number. The control number, of course, changed because the new headlines, since now we don't have 14 headlines, we just have 4. We mentioned the new name of the new standard. It has cybersecurity in it, as you can remember. So at the old version, there was an approach for only information security perspective. They just care about the information security because there wasn't any cybersecurity that are in need of be concerned about. But in the 2022, the cybersecurity part of the technology is much more wider than the physical side of the things. When I say physical, I mean cables and stuff. So they of course added the cybersecurity in the name, and they have some controls and they have some focus for the cybersecurity part. So when they include cybersecurity, they of course glance the other standards, other frameworks, like how they do it and what is the best thing that they do in the cybersecurity part. So the specification, protection, identification, and response and recovery concepts are, I believe, make much more sense for the ISO. So they took them from the NIST security framework and they added to the ISO 27001. So ISO 27001 is going to be a much more wider and complex and how they say, much more covering for the security of the organizations, because we're not just focusing on this information security. We are focusing on information security of the organization, cyber security of the organization, physical entrance of the organization, much more deeply concerned protection, compliant to the protection of the personal information regulations. So they are aiming to cover all side of the information security side, I believe. Okay, so there is a new table that that it's the first time that we see in an ISO standard. They now have an attribute table. With the change, with the new 2022 version, there is an attribute table evaluated in 5 different categories for each control. So when we go through the standard, they have this table for every control, and they tell you what this control is, control is there for, how it can serve its purpose for us, what this control is, what this control is do for us, and it gives some more information with hashtags that's coming from the social media. So the control type is the attribute to view the controls from the perspective of when and how the control changes the risk in relation to the occurrence of an information security event. So attribute values consist of prevent, detective, and remedial. So before, when it's happening, and after. So when we look at the control type, we know what control is going to serve us beforehand of the incident or risk, or at the very moment when the risk is happening, or after the risk happened, and at a remedial, like the controls that we should be taking after an incident happening, so that the incident or risk could never happen again. When it comes to information security properties, they are the attribute for viewing the controls from the perspective of information characteristic that the controls will contribute to the protection of the organization. And they have a confidentiality, integrity, and availability side of matters in it. So, but when we look at the attribute table, we can see that which control contribute to confidentiality part of the organization, or the information, or integrity of the information, or the availability of the information. So we will, when we review all the controls of the new version of 27002, we will see every control matter have some confidentiality or integrity or availability, all of them or some of them included, so that we know that what they contribute with. When we go to the cybersecurity concepts, are, of course, with a new version of the standard is also always important for us. So the cybersecurity concept that they state is, I believe, very compliant with the real life cybersecurity management. So at every incident, every cybersecurity incident always have a defining part, a protection part, a detection part, a responding, and recovery part. So we always need to define the incidents, the vulnerabilities for cybersecurity, for the security of the systems. Of course, we need to protect the systems. We need to detect an incident, a cybersecurity incident. We need to respond to a cybersecurity incident to minimize the losses, and we need to recover after a cybersecurity incident in a short term, so that we have much less information security sustainability damage. So cybersecurity concepts include define, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So like I said, when we take into hand a cybersecurity incident, or organization cybersecurity side, we need to define the vulnerabilities. We need to protect the organization. We need to detect the incident, respond to incident, and recover from the incident. So the headlines of the cybersecurity concepts makes much more sense. Makes really good sense to me. Operational capabilities. Operational capabilities are the qualifications to view controls from the perspective of the practitioner's information security capabilities. Like the organizational capabilities are an asset of course. So when we evaluate each control with the operational capability table, we can see which asset, which resource is needed for that control to realize. So attribute values consist of governance, asset management, information protection, human resource security, physical security, system and network security, application security, identity and access management, threat and vulnerability management, continuity, supply relations security, and information relations security. So when you look at the operational capabilities, it reminds me that old headlines that the ISO 27002 had. So they didn't just throw away the old headlines, they took the headlines and they added in the new version with operational capabilities. So it is easier for us to transmit from old version to new version with the new headlines, because if we have some knowledge about the old version, we can predict what the control is there for in the new version. We have a new question. I want to get the new norm ISO 27002. You can get it from ISO's standard, ISO's its own site, I believe, because it is available at the moment. And lastly, we have security domains. Security domains are qualification to view controls from the perspective of four information security areas. This includes management and ecosystem, information system security management and risk management, and ecosystem cybersecurity management. That help us with the what I just count, that have some categories under them. So when we look at the security domains, we can see which control is provided with the what operational capabilities or what asset of the organizational that can provide for the management system. So every control has some security domains that is going to be contributed to the organizational's management system. So all in all, new control layout includes control title, the short name of the control itself, attribute table that we just reviewed, the control itself, the purpose of the control, and how can we apply it to the management system we have, guidance, the best practices, good practices, examples of the control, and if the control has the other information part of the layout. So let's check out the controls of the new 27002 standard. We have four headlines. We had four headlines, as you can remember, and I said we can determine the importance of the headline by counting the number of controls under the headline. So when we look at the people, the controls concerning the individuals itself, we have 37 controls under it. So this tells us that ISO know the incidents almost always rises from the employees or humans. So they put a lot of controls under the people headline. Do we have a new question? No. So then we have physically. The controls concern the physical objects, entrance, security of the physical assets. We have 8 controls because in the new upcoming world, the physical side is much more secure, even though we just leave it at that. So we have 8 controls under the physical side of the security of the organization. Then we have technology, which has 34 controls under it. So of course, after the individual or the people side of the security, cyber security or security of the organization, we have technology, because it's always evolves. There's always something new with the technology. So we have 34 controls under the technology. Then we have organization. In order for an effective and efficient management system, we need to have some organizational rules. We have some frameworks. We have some will to implement and sustain the management system in our organization. So we have 14 controls under the organization. Also, the organization headline serves as a dumping headline. So controls other than the above and related to the organization are find themselves a space under the organization headline. So the controls are labeled according to 5 attribute types that we just talked about. The control type: preventive, detection, corrective, information security features: privacy, integrity, accessibility, confidentiality, integrity, and accessibility. Cybersecurity concepts: detection, protection, and intervention. Operational capabilities: governance, asset management, information protection, human resources security, physical security, system and network security, application security. That the security side of the old 14 headlines, as I call it, and the security areas such as governance and ecosystem, protection, defense, and resilience. Now that we're looking at the new controls, we can see the 5.1, which were combined to one, policies for information security, and we can see it's a preventive control. The preventive control tells us that this control is acts as a preventive protection to not having an incident, to not having an not having an information security incident to the organization itself. And when we look at information security properties, we can see the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. All 3 of them are here because in the policies we give our promises to the relevant side of the organization that we will be taking care of the all 3 property of the security of the organization. Cybersecurity concepts: identify because it is the beforehand of a risk's occurrence. So the identify part seems correct. Operational capabilities: governance. The governance is needed because the top management's commitment is what we need in the 5.1 policies for information security. So governance is what we're looking for. And the security domains: governance and an ecosystem and resilience. Again, the top management commitment is what we look for in the 5.1. So the governance seems appropriate. 5.2, information security roles and responsibilities. This was also, I believe, merged because this was taken into hand in both the mandatory requirements and the Annex A. So that now we have one. 5.3, segregation of duties. It was important. It was stayed the same with the old version and the new version. 5.4, management responsibilities. Again, commitment of the top management and the information security management team. 5.5, contact with the authorities. That also stayed the same. 5.6, contact with special interest groups, also stay the same. 5.7, threat intelligence. Threat intelligence is a new control that comes with a new version. It took into hand cybersecurity incidents, how we react to them, how we respond to them, and how can we collect evidences. So we have We have someone that rose its hand. Yes, Mr. Nazim. Okay, Mr. Nazim can ask whatever he feels like it. 5A, information security in project management, stayed the same with the old version. 5.9, 5.9, inventory of information and other associated assets. This was also a new control with the new version. It took into hand the information specific assets and the assets that are associated with the other assets. So we can know if some laptop is broken, what other part of the organization is going to be affected. 5.10, acceptable use of the information and other associated assets. Again, if an information of the asset is not provided enough, what other assets are affected from it, and how should be used the information assets in accordance with the organizational rules. 5.11, return of assets, stayed the same. 5.12, classification of information also stayed the same. It's covered this classification of the assets in accordance with the importance of the assets to the organization itself. 5.13, labeling of information, again stayed the same. We should label our information and assets according to the classification of it. 5.14, information transfer, also stayed the same. It regulates the transfer of the information. 5.15, access control, also stayed the same with the organizational side of the perspective. 5.16, identity management, stayed the same. It covers the management of identity management. How can we provide identity to the employees or users and the management of the process. 5.17 is a new control with authentication information. The authentication was taken into hand with the identity management, but it's not the same thing. The identity management is when a user account is created or which users should access to the which server or part of the organization, but the authentication is given the power to a user to access or change or delete any information from our systems. So the new control is always also useful. 5.18, access rights. We had a control for the access rights, but this control is took into hand the giving the access rights to the users. 5.19, information security and supplier relationships. This was also stayed the same. 5.20, addressing information security within supplier agreements. This was also stayed the same. It tells us we need to have an agreement between the suppliers in order to protect ourselves and the suppliers. It provides protection for both sides. 5.21, managing information security in the information communication technology supply chain. This one's name was changed so that we can understand it much more. So it's a good change, and the explanation is also very helpful of it. 5.23, information security for use of cloud services. It's a new control that took into hand of cloud services of the organization. Now that I also give consultancy services to organizations, and I can say that 70% of my customers are always using cloud services for their main storing and processing activities. So the cloud security, cloud management is much more important in this day than 2013. Uh, 523 information security for cloud services. After that, 524 information security incident management, planning and preparation. This was changed in the old version. It doesn't include the preparation part, but now we have now we have to prepare for the incident, plan the management of the incident, and be ready for the incident when it happens or not. 529 information security during disruption. This was also changed its name because in the old version everyone was thinking about the business continuity, not the information security continuity. But with the new name, it is very clear that that the standard is focusing on the continuity of the information security, not the business continuity. Of course, you can add the business continuity to information security planning, but when you do that, you more like implementing 2020 301, which is a different family with different standard. But in the 27001, we need to focus on information security continuity. Also, we can add the business continuity to the information security continuity. 530 information communication technologies readiness for business continuity. This was new. This was a new control that took into hand the readiness of the business continuity. This is the matter. This is the control where you think about the continuity of the information transmission communication technologies such as emails, cabling, or cloud services, whatever you use for the communication throughout the organization. Now you can pay your attention to the readiness of the continuity or sustainability of the technology itself. Now that the organization side is over, we are at the human people side of the controls. 6.2 terms and conditions of employment. This was stayed the same. 6.3 information security awareness, education and training also stayed the same. But I can say that doing the information security training once a year is not an effective or efficient way of reducing the awareness level. So so the standard always tells us that the monitor the awareness level and do and provide trainings or other materials, actions, activities to raise the awareness level even more. So doing the information security training once a year is not an enough way of security awareness raising. So always have some other activities that will support the awareness level of the organization. 6.5 disciplinary processes also stayed the same. 6.6 confidentiality or non-disclosure agreements. This was under 13 or 15th matter, 15th headline, but now it's under the human people headline. It tells us that all the parties that have the authority to access our systems, or all the parties that we share our information with, must have a confidentiality or non-disclosure agreement for us to protect our information that we give to the other parties, other relevant parties. 6.7 remote working stayed the same, but now much more important in the nowadays with the pandemic. 6.8 information security event reporting also stayed the same. Now after the human people headlines, we now have the physical headline, which starts with 7.1 physical security parameters, which have the secure lines, secure parameters of the organization that the organization tries to protect and monitor. And we have a question from Dave. Did I see there was a 530 31.2 or was 530 the last one before 6.2? Let's just check it together. We have 531, but is legal, statutory, regulatory, and contractual requirements, which also state the same. There's no changes about the controls in this page. Let's just go through with them together. Intellectual property rights, protection of records, privacy and protection of personal identifiable information, independent review of information security, which is covered with the certification auditing, compliance with policies, rules, and standards for information security, which is state the same, documented operating procedures, which is state the same. And when we go through the physical side of the headline, we have 7.2 physical entry, which was combined into one. We have 7.3 securing offices, rooms, and facilities, which also state the same. 7.4 physical security monitoring was a new control with the new standard. 7.5 protecting against physical and environmental threats was also state the same. 7.6 working in secure areas was also state the same. But when we go through this controls, you can see every one of the controls has a control name, control type, information security properties, cyber security concepts, operational capabilities, and security domains named under them. So when you go through the standard itself, these attribute tables are all under the security controls, so they can tell what they contributed to it, such as 7.8 equipment system and protection is a preventive action which provides us with the protection and continuity of the equipments that the organization have or in use for the processes to run, for some processes to run, and it serves confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But we go through the 7.7 clear desk and clear screen, we can see it just serves for confidentiality part of the information, because when you close, when you secure the areas you work on, you just provide the confidentiality of the information that you process at the moment from the unnecessary and unwanted visitors that are passing through the station that you're working on. So we can just evaluate the attribute table and see what the control matter is doing for us, because I've been asked many times what this control is even here for. So and I always have to answer the question with thinking and finding some sensible reason to tell this control is doing that or this control is doing that. But with the new standard, all controls are telling us that what they're used for, what they're here for. So when we go in with 7.9 security of access off premises, we can see that it's also preventive control, also protecting confidentiality, integrity, and availability side of the information. But when we think about the sporting utilities, it's not just a preventive action; it's also a detective action, because detective is when a risk is happening at the moment. So when an electricity is cut off, there's an incident happening at the moment. So if you don't prepare yourself for the incident, you are much likely going to be having a damage of your information security continuity. So all the controls have their purposes, and the purposes of the controls are stated in this standard itself. So when we go into the cable and security, of course, cable security is really important for the organization because it provides us the communication with the cloud servers, with the internet. Even though we're using our netbooks now, the internet for our business to be online is provided with the cables. So it's always preventive action. 7.13 equipment management, also preventive. 7.14 security disposal or reuse of equipment is preventive, but it serves only on confidentiality, because the disposal or reuse of equipment, doing securely disposal or securely reusing the equipment doesn't provide any integrity or availability to the organization, because the equipment is going to be disposed or reduced anyways. But it serves the confidentiality part, because if we don't do the process with security in mind, we can leak our information to the outside of our organization, or we can share the information with the unwanted employee unwillingly. When we go through the technological controls, we can start with 8.1 user endpoint devices, 8.2 privileged access rights, 8.3 information security, information access restriction. But the 8.1 user endpoint devices is a new control which handles the endpoint, the users the used equipments that the user have, like their phones, and how can we protect them. And when we look at the 8.4, access to source code is state the same. It tells us how it tells us the requirements of how to protect the source codes, and we protect our source codes with authentication and protecting the environment where the source code is kept. How the source code is protected against changes, unwanted changes and stuff. 8.5 secure authentication is state the same. It's a preventive action. It is there for to protect. When we look at 8.6, we have capacity management. The capacity management is always taken lightly, because many organizations use cloud services, and the capacity management of the cloud services are doing automatically. So many organizations, many small organizations, matter of fact, doesn't manage their capacities on the cloud services, because it's always incremented automatically. But when we audit the organization, we ask, did you determine your thresholds of your servers for the capacity monitoring, capacity management? And the answer I get from many of the organization, that no, I don't know the thresholds. The system does it automatically. But the standard wants us to know, determine, and monitor the thresholds ourselves. So when you take into hand of the capacity management of your servers, always determine your thresholds. If you can, if applicable, state it in the procedure, so that in the audit you can show the auditor the determined thresholds of the servers. Of course, make sure the servers and the documents are matching each other when it comes to the threshold numbers. 8.7 protection against malware. It's state the same. In the general thought, protection against malware is taken in hand by implementing an antivirus to the organization. Of course, there are endless ways of protecting the organization against malwares, but the easiest and the most common way of protecting an organization from a malware is using antivirus, because the antiviruses works with predetermined signature-based databases. So and a file downloads or installed to the system, the antivirus always just scans the file to see if the file ever matches the signature-based database that the antivirus has. If the file or the application or any of the information that you acquire from different sources matches with the malware signatures, the antivirus just say that this is a dangerous file and be careful about it. So it's a very good control and it's very easy to access. When we go to the 8.8 management of technical vulnerabilities, as you can remember, management of technical vulnerabilities was separated to two different controls. And this technical vulnerabilities tells us that be careful about, know your vulnerabilities, know your weaknesses, and take actions to close or minimize the vulnerabilities, weaknesses that the organization or the technique or the system has. So having a penetration testing service doesn't just is not enough by itself. You must have your penetration test or vulnerability scan or whatever the tool you have. You must do your vulnerability checks regularly, and you must take into account the results of the scan or test, and you must take actions for the vulnerabilities that your system have. Do we have another question? No, we don't. Eight nine is a new control, configuration management. Configuration management is take into hand the system's configurations, network devices configurations, how you do it, who is authenticated, who is able to do it, who's authorized to do it. So 8.9 is a new control, and I believe it's a well-deserved one. 8.10 information deletion, 8.11 data masking, 8.12 data leakage prevention is all new controls, and they serve the organization to be more compliant with the GDPR regulations or any regulation that is similar to the GDPR. Also, it provides more security with deletion or masking or transmitting the information. Of course, the data leakage prevention, for the data leakage prevention, we have IDS and IPS tools that is nowadays are very easy to access. But when you think about the ISO 27 or ISO 27001 standards, don't just think about the okay, I should get this tool, I should get that tool for the compliance of the for the standard. No, we don't need any tools for the ISO 27001 or 27002 standard. To be more compliant with them, of course, or to be more to have more complex and more secure system, of course, you can require the tools, applications. You can, if you have the budget for it, you can spend it on some technology. But for compliance, for minimum level of compliance, you don't need any tools. You just need to create some mechanism for preventing the data leakage, and you're compliant with the matter. (8.14) redundancy of information processing facilities. Redundancy is a very good thing to have. Always work with redundancies and have a spare employee, if you will, or spare laptops and spare other devices that the organization that your organization may need. Because during the pandemic, we saw many employees were sick and weren't able to work. So many organizations organizations suffer from the lack of employees that are effectively working, or if you have like more than 50 employee, you may have 5 or 10 broken laptops every year. So it's good to have some spare equipment sitting around, waiting for if any employee has broken equipment to be replaced with. So when you do that, the continuity part of your organization will be improved more than you can imagine. 8.15 logging. It is different than the monitoring. It's more technical now, so it stays the same, but the log management, protection of the log information is always important. In the audits, the log management always have some important space in the audit part. 8.16 monitoring activities are new to the standard. It's different than the logging. It covers different part of the monitoring parts than the logging, because the following and managing the logs aren't the only way to monitor your systems, monitor your activities. So 8.16 is covering different side of the monitoring parts. 8.17 clock synchronization. It's a not much effort put into it, but very important control, because if your clock synchronization of the system servers or applications are unmatched, you can have some very serious and wrong information about your system, about the entrance information, about the log, about timestamps on your logs. It can affect, it can have a bad effect on many of the systems on your organization. So clock synchronization seems like a light control, small control, but when it comes bad. 8.18 use of privilege utility programs like Teamweaver, Anydesk. The standard tells us not to use the privilege utility programs because in a default settings, Windows doesn't have Windows comes with closed RDP closed. But when you download Teamweaver or Anydesk or similar programs to them, you just trespass the security control that Windows have and open your internal network to the outer world with a third-party application. So the usage of privilege utility programs must always be restricted, and they need to be under control. 8.19 installation of software on operational systems. It's different than the use of privileged utility programs. It tells us to monitor and restrict of installing or installing softwares to the operational systems, because you never know which source for the software that the users use, or you never know which software that they're going to be downloading or installing, or you never know that software will be affecting the rest of the system. So always restrict and monitor the installation of software on your operational systems. 8.20 network security. Also, it was stayed the same. It's a preventive and detective control. 8.21 security of network services. Also stayed the same. Change the number. Preventive action. Service with confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the systems. 8.20 segregation of networks. It's a good security practice to use because it blocks the communication between two different parties. So if you use if you use one network for very different departments or services or processes, you may need to take into account that the different side of the employees, users, or processes may see the information that they shouldn't have. So segregating them is a good way to improve the security of the organization. 823 web filtering. It's a new control since the cybersecurity part of the standard is much more focused now. The web filtering is coming to hand. 824 use of cryptography is stayed the same, change the number. 825 secure development lifecycle stayed the same with the old version, but I never see a organization with the perfect match in secure development lifecycle control because in the procedures, in the documents, they have this perfect example of secure development lifecycle, but when it comes to the real life, it's very hard to implement the perfect development lifecycle. So it's always something fishy about something in the gray spot about the organization with the secure development processes, because they never have the power, or they never give their focus enough to implement the documented side of the development lifecycle in the real life. 826 application security requirements. It's stayed the same. It's good to determine the requirements of your applications in order for their security. 827 secure system architecture and engineering principles. That it is a principle, it is a document where we define the requirement security side of the development and the architectural side, or how we plan the architectural side of the secure coding guidelines. So for the smooth and accurate and much less vulnerability consistent applications to code, you need to have an architectural planning beforehand. So 827 provides us with the best coding security practices, but usually at the organizations we just see a principle, but we never see it in the realization in the real life. 828 secure coding, it's a new control. 829 security testing in development and acceptance. It's a must. All the organizations that develop softwares almost always does it. 830 outsource development. It's where it comes very important. If your organization doesn't have a development team, software development team, or you have software development team, but you still take the outsource service, the source code, the code that is going to be written is in danger if you don't have any agreement or you don't monitor the outsource service that you have. So always have an agreement where you protect your rights, where you protect your asset, and claim the rights of the software when it's completed. 831 separation of development, test, and production environments, which is very important but stayed the same. 832 change management, also very important. It's when the change management activates where there is a change in the system that affects the information security management system. So if a department is changed, or a new department is coming, or a department is separated into 2 or 3 departments, or when there is a new operational system released, and you want your system, you want your computers to transmit to the new operation system, something that will affect the information security management system, is going to be go through the change management process. So you know the risks, you plan the changing process, you test the wanted change so that any unwanted situation is not happening to the organization, to your organization. So 832 change management is very important control. 833 test information, protection of test information is important. Even though most information state that they use dummy test data, they always use some real information when they test their softwares. So protecting the test information is really important. And 834, a new control, protection of information system during the audit testing is important, because audit testing, testing your systems may cause the system to overload or react weirdly, so that your continuity of the information security may lack. So protection the information system during any testing, specifically audit testing, is important. And with saying that, I can have your questions now, if you have any. We also shared the training webinar in our YouTube channel. So you can just type CFE cert on the YouTube, and you can just rewatch my webinar on our channel. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for that, Dave. So have a nice day. Take care.